Hello and welcome. So, in a surprise announcement that no one really expected, id Software released a new master level of the Super Gore nest, and after having played through it 3 times with not so great results, I wanted to make this video discussing the new Super Gore nest master level from a level design, difficulty curve, and especially bug testing standpoint, because there are bugs, and a lot of them. So to begin, how is the master level? Well, right off the bat I can say that this was a fun, engaging, and fairly challenging master level, especially if it's your first time doing it. Doesn't matter if you play on the easiest difficulty or the hardest, I feel that it strikes a fairly good balance of fun and challenge. But of course, that is my subjective view on the matter because I personally played on Ultra Violence, and eventually I will go to Ultra Nightmare as well. Now, in terms of difficulty, there is a somewhat linear difficulty curve as you progress through the level, which requires you to change up your gameplay ever so slightly, like for example using a different mod. But unfortunately I couldn't help but feel that there were certain areas which had what I would call game time padding. And by that I mean that the amount of demons and also the types of demons that spawn are only there to pad your runtime. You will notice immediately how many tyrants, carcasses, and as the community puts it, social distancing tentacles are present throughout the level. There's quite a lot of them, and honestly, I feel that it takes away from the fun aspect of the level. One good example of padding is in the beginning where there is a moving pillar that keeps smashing into a middle platform. That area is just filled with tentacles and carcasses. It also has a buff totem which spawns as soon as you enter the room, but that can be destroyed quite easily. And to be honest, I found staying on the second level to be the easier way of clearing that arena out because you get to avoid all the tentacles on the bottom floor, and you just let the demons come to you. Once you clear them out, you'll spend something like an extra minute or two just seeing fodder demons spawn. And after you've killed enough fodder demons, only then will the doors open and you can move on with the level. That honestly feels like a bug to me which somehow passed through QA. And that's a very common theme in this update. A lot of bugs have somehow passed through QA. And that was just one example that I could think of where I felt that there was padding in the overall level design. I've always had a love and hate relationship with tyrants. They're a damn good demon design, but overall they're quite bland. They're effectively bullet sponges and their attacks are somewhat easily avoided. They're like a boring version of a Doom Hunter but with a lot more health. Overall, you just unload your ammo into them and eventually they'll fall. I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit too overly critical, but yeah, I've always found tyrants to be a little bit boring, and this level has quite a few tyrants, especially at the end, where there's like 4 tyrants altogether, so yeah. But on the flip side, there's only a handful of barons in the level, which I found to be quite refreshing, especially because there were so many barons in the Ancient God DLC that it actually felt like they were padding the runtime. Similarly, there's also a handful of archviles, especially at the end, so I would recommend saving your crucible for that. And actually the first time that I played, I actually completely forgot about the crucible, because I'm so used to the DLC. But when I played through it the third time, I knew exactly what I had to do. Anyways, moving on. While the difficulty is linear, there are also a few areas where it spikes up quite a bit. And it does so by using the Fog of War mechanic from the Blood Swamps in the DLC, which I can say is probably the most polarizing mechanic since Marauders. People either hate it or they love it. There is no middle ground. Now, the Fog of War mechanic is used twice in this master level. The first one is where the flesh pillars are. So as you enter, the room starts to fill up with an ordinary gas cloud. But guess what? This is no ordinary gas cloud, because you are now surrounded by fodder demons, Terminators, and 1 Marauder. And to be honest, I didn't really have any trouble here, because I kept using my frag grenades and my destroyer blade, and that was more than enough to keep me safe in the room. I felt that that was a great and balanced use of the Fog of War mechanic. It sort of forces you to use your other senses, like your hearing, to determine which enemies have spawned and sort of roughly where they are. The next area which I know people will hate is in this very small room with 2 small rooms on either side. So first you are greeted with 2 Spectre Pinkies. Then the room fills up with the gas, and then you have 2 Cyber Mancubus along with a few fodder demons. Then when you think you're done, a buff totem is spawned, but it's behind a wall, along with a few Terminators and a normal Mancubus. Once you kill those demons, it is only then can you destroy the totem and move on. I actually nearly died there a few times, so I can imagine that place being quite rough on Nightmare. Now, speaking of buff totems, there are actually quite a lot of buff totems throughout this level, but luckily they're easy to find and manage. But I can't help but feel that there's maybe a few too many buff totems. I feel they could maybe remove 1 or 2, and the level will still retain its challenge and fun aspect. With the number of buff totems throughout the level, it sort of seems like it's a bit of a gimmick. It's there just for the sake of difficulty, sort of like difficulty for the sake of difficulty. And I feel that that is the antithesis of good level design. I don't know, maybe I'm just being a bit too overly critical. I have to say that there are 2 locations in this master level which I really have to give them props for because I thoroughly enjoyed myself. First location actually utilizes the buff totem again, and that entire room is just a massive meme. So, the buff totem is locked behind the demonic walls, and you have 2 battalions of fodder demons that spawn off either side of the hallway. Then, once you clear them out, 2 additional battalions of imps spawn. Then finally, you have your buffed gargoyles, and once you clear out the first wave of gargoyles, the buff totem can then be destroyed. I have to say, I actually loved that room, because that genuinely made me laugh, and the moment I saw this small little army in this perfect rectangular formation, I immediately knew that I had to use the destroyer blade. I could just tell that the level designer intended for the player to use the destroyer blade, and just seeing this nice little army of demons cut in half like butter. It was quite funny, I have to admit. Secondly, the next area is the power-up room, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It was only for a few minutes, but I genuinely had a lot of fun in it. The first time I played, I stood there for a while expecting demons to spawn, and my plan was to hold on to the power-up because I was expecting some super heavy demons in the next room. Then after a short while I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna pick it up and see what happens. And I just went berserk on the demons. And that small room was the perfect representation from a scene in the movie The Watchmen, if you've seen it.
None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me!
I genuinely enjoyed it, so I have to give them props for this. And finally, we come to the disappointing part of the update. Previously, I've mentioned how many bugs there are, and there are a lot of them. Most of them are outright game-breaking bugs. Let me go through some of the bugs that still exist, and the new ones that have been introduced to the game. So first of all, the blood punch still doesn't really work. As you're seeing in the footage right now, I try to use my blood punch on the Cyber Mancubus. Doesn't matter if I die, I just wanted to see if it worked. And after hitting him a few times, it still doesn't work, and I end up losing one of my extra lives. So you can imagine how frustrating that would be if you were playing on Ultra Nightmare and you happen to lose your life just because a game mechanic doesn't work. Also, I've noticed ever since the DLC came out that when you use Blood Punch, sometimes it forces your camera to look downwards. If that bug exists on console, I can just imagine how annoying that would be. And finally, we have the meat hook, which is still unreliable at best. I know that the meat hook has a minimum range, but overall its functionality it causes more problems than it solves. Now, let's talk about the new ones that have entered the game. So on my second playthrough, I went into this room and a Spectre Whiplash spawned. I dispatched of it quite quickly, but I was stuck in that room. I could not get out. There were no new mobs that were spawning and there was nothing that I could do. But you might be saying, hey, just reload the checkpoint, my Doom dude. Well, sure, great idea. But if you do, you'll be teleported outside of the room into the first big arena, and the door will be closed. And the only way for you to open it is for you to go to the beginning of the level where you destroy the wall and fight all the demons again in that arena. You are effectively restarting the entire level if you get stuck. Then, on my most recent playthrough, which is the video you're watching right now, my third attempt, at the very end, the imps would keep spawning infinitely, which meant that I could not end the level even though I was 99% done. And at that point, I could have tried reloading the checkpoint, but I really did not care at that point, so I just quit, and I'll just come back to it when it is fixed. The next one is pretty huge, and has been reported by a fair few of the community members, that apparently playing the master level on Ultra Nightmare and dying would delete your entire save slot, because apparently the game thinks that by dying in the master level, it still considers it as dying in the main campaign. So if you die in Ultra Nightmare, your save game is deleted, and that's exactly what happens here. But the problem is, this is only a master level, not the main campaign. So I can only imagine how frustrating that would be. Also, there have been rumors of really long load screens. Personally, I haven't really experienced this because my game is on an SSD, but it has been reported by a fair few people, and I can imagine how annoying it would be. Also, Frosty Zen, one of the best speedrunners I've ever seen, reported a ninja nerf to the Unmaker, where it no longer benefits from infinite ammo while having the overdrive buff active, the yellow buff. And all I'm going to say on this matter is that this is not a good change. Additionally, there's also bugs of people completing all the challenges and still not getting their golden gun skin. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of game-breaking bugs that have somehow passed through QA. I can't help but feel that this was from an executive decision, maybe from the higher-ups that wanted this master level to be released as is and fixed at a later point. And this seems to be a very common trend in gaming nowadays, to release a game half-finished and eventually fix the game at a later date. Now, I want to be clear that I'm not bashing the developers, because they've done a fantastic job on this master level. Honestly, I feel it is a good, balanced level for all player types and difficulties. But I do feel that forcing this update out so randomly was a decision, maybe, by a higher up, and this was probably out of the developers' hands. What I'm trying to say is that I do hope that these bugs are fixed as soon as possible, and I hope in the future that they take their time with bug testing before sending stuff out like this, because even the DLC had its fair share of bugs, such as getting forcefully flung out of the map if you try to climb up to a ledge or something, which I experienced myself during my Ultra Nightmare playthrough. Luckily, this bug has only been experienced in the first level, the UAC Atlantica, so there's not a lot of time that was lost. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. Let me know what you thought of the master level in the comment section below. Do you agree with what I say or do you disagree? Well, let me know. As always, I will see you in the next one.